Another fact-checker article on Donald Trump's public speech, this time his speech before the United Nations on September the 25th, 2018, contributed by Glenn Kessler to the Washington Post. So again, no copyright infringement intended. And this is a summary of the rather lengthy article. A skilled public speaker often knows how to craft his or her own words for the audience. But President Trump started off his speech to the United Nations General Assembly with a number of bragging claims lifted straight from his campaign rallies. In a rare show of sympathy for Donald Trump, I must say that given the harsh tone of especially his campaign rally speeches, this speech at least was reasonably polite, and at least it did not contain the part of it which I watched earlier or listened to earlier today on YouTube. It didn't contain inflammatory language, at least not compared to his Twitter feed or his campaign rally speeches, nor did he call any human being who disagreed with him publicly an animal. So by Trump's own standards, it was a fairly decent political speech. So in this article, the journalist examines 14 key claims made by the president in his speech in their original order. Claim 1. In less than 2 years, my administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. And this claim was actually greeted, according to the journalist, with laughter. According to the fact-checkers database of Trump's false and misleading claims, Trump started saying that he had done more than any previous president when he was not even at the 6-month mark, that is back in late July 2017. And he has now repeated the line more than 30 times. Although in fairness, he hardly is the first boastful or arrogant US president. Certainly the whirlwind of accomplishments under presidents such as Franklin Roosevelt, Lyndon Johnson, Ronald Reagan, and Barack Obama exceed Trump's efforts. As of September the 12th, 2018, his 600th day as US president, Trump had signed 238 bills, most of which were minor. Claim 2. America's economy is booming like never before. This is highly dubious, but it's another favorite talking point that Trump has uttered more than 50 times. Well, given the still horrendously large, horrendously gargantuan federal budget deficit, which is projected to be over $900 billion US dollars in the fiscal year that will end on September the 30th, this, of course, cannot be the full truth. The United States has a larger gross public debt than ever before. Yes, its unemployment rate is low, but not a record low one. By just about any important measure, the economy today is not doing as well as it did under Presidents Dwight Eisenhower, Lyndon Johnson, Bill Clinton, and even Ulysses Grant. Claim 3. We've added more than 4 million new jobs, including 500,000 manufacturing jobs. Trump often inflates his totals by including nearly 3 months when he was not yet president. At the time of this speech, almost 3.6 million jobs had been created during his presidency, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. In the 19 months starting after Trump's inauguration, the economy created 3.58 million new jobs, but that is still less than the 3.96 million created in the last 19 months of Obama's presidency. US manufacturing employment has been increasing at a steady rate since 2010. And the increase in Trump's presidency has been about 350,000, not 500,000 according to Bureau of Labor Statistics. Claim 4, if I have kept track. We have passed the biggest tax cuts and reforms in American history. In fact, Trump's tax cut ranks 8th when measured as a percentage of the size of US economy. Claim 5. We've started the construction of a major border wall. However, none of the $1.57 billion US dollars appropriated for border protection may be used for the prototypes of a concrete wall. Moreover, the bill identified that the money for the barriers, about $1.3 billion, could be used only for items listed as primary pedestrian levee fencing, primary pedestrian fencing, and secondary fencing. The closest thing to a wall would be the levee fencing, which is a concrete levee topped by bollard fencing. As far as we can tell, only 33 miles or 53 kilometers of new barrier fencing on top of an existing levee in Hidalgo County, Texas, and a fence in Starr County, Texas, would be funded under the 2018 bill. Then, Claim 6. In June, I traveled to Singapore to meet face-to-face with North Korea's leader, Chairman Kim Jong-un. We had highly productive conversations and meetings, and we agreed that it was in both countries' interest to pursue the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Since that meeting, we have already seen a number of encouraging measures that few could have imagined only a short time ago. However, the Washington Post reported in June that US intelligence officials, citing newly obtained evidence, have concluded that North Korea does not intend to fully surrender its nuclear stockpile and instead is considering ways to conceal secret production facilities and the number of weapons it has. And in July, the Post reported that US spy agencies are seeing signs that North Korea is constructing new missiles at a factory that produced the country's first intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of reaching the United States. North Korea has a long history of making agreements and then not living up to them. Claim 7. The Iran deal was a windfall for Iran's leaders. In the years since the deal was reached, Iran's military budget grew nearly 40%. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, or SIPRI, Iran's military expenditure increased nearly 30% from 2015, when the JCPOA was adopted, to 2017. This increase brought Iran's military spending back to near 2006 levels. However, as a share of Iran's overall government spending, its military expenditure accounted for 15.4% in 2015 and then 15.8% in 2017. According to a White House official, this spending level is expected to remain stable in 2018. Iran's military expenditure as a share of its gross domestic product increased in the same period from 2.6 to 3.1%, and for comparison, in 2016, the United States spent about 3.3% of its GDP on the military. Claim 8. We cannot allow a regime that chants death to America and that threatens Israel with annihilation to possess the means to deliver a nuclear warhead to any city on Earth. It's not entirely clear whether Iran means to annihilate Israel, such as wiping it off the map. The supreme leader of Iran's Muslims, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has been consistent in speaking of his hatred of Israel, but without a military context. Claim 9. Even worse, some countries abused their openness to dump their products, subsidize their goods, target our industries, and manipulate their currencies to gain unfair advantage over our country. As a result, our trade deficit ballooned to nearly $800 billion a year. However, at least officially, according to the Commerce Department, the U.S. trade deficit in 2017 was $568 billion. For some reason, both in this claim and in an interview he gave, I think in December 2017, also to the Washington Post, Trump in these figures considers only the goods trade, as if the services trade wasn't a part of the trade balance, and of course it always is. In the December 2017 interview, he was discussing Canada's alleged trade surplus with the United States. Trump gets his $800 billion number by looking only at the deficit for trade in goods, $811 billion, even though U.S. trade in services runs a substantial surplus of $243 billion. Moreover, Trump blames the trade deficit on the actions of other countries. But trade deficits are also affected by macroeconomic factors, such as the relative strength of currencies, economic growth rates, and savings and investment rates. Then claim, is it 10? The United States lost over 3 million manufacturing jobs, nearly a quarter of all steel jobs, and 60,000 factories after China joined the WTO, or World Trade Organization. Most economists would agree that China's industrial rise caused millions of job losses in the United States and thousands of factory closures. There's no definitive estimate of how many of those jobs were lost or how many of these factories closed specifically because of China. The ICC, or International Court of Justice, claims, this is perhaps claim 11, near universal jurisdiction over the citizens of every country violating all principles of justice, fairness, and due process. However, the ICC was established by the Rome Statute, which so far 118 countries out of over 190 countries have ratified. In other words, over 70 independent countries, including the United States, have not yet ratified the Rome Statute. Afghanistan is a member of the ICC, and in theory a war crimes prosecution in that country could cover possible crimes committed by US forces. However, Afghanistan has also signed an Article 98 agreement with the United States. A US law prohibits the government from assisting the ICC in extraditing US citizens. Claim 12. OPEC and OPEC nations. OPEC is the acronym for Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, most of which are, of course, Middle Eastern Arab countries, are as usual ripping off the rest of the world, and I don't like it. Nobody should like it. We defend many of these nations for nothing, and then they take advantage of us by giving us high oil prices. Not good. A key factor, however, in the recent rise in the cost of oil is Trump's withdrawal from the Iran nuclear accord and the imposition of new sanctions on one of the world's leading oil producers. Experts say US sanctions could drive oil prices to above $100 a barrel, up from about $70 a barrel currently. Claim 13. The United States is the world's largest giver in the world by far of foreign aid. So this is once again a mixed figure. If we include the raw dollars, this is true. However, if we factor in the gross national income figures, the United States is far from being the world's largest giver of foreign aid. So, in the raw dollar figures, the United States did top the givers list among the independent countries in 2017 with 35.3 billion US dollars, compared with $24.7 billion for Germany and 18 billion for Britain, according to preliminary data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD. However, as a percentage of gross national income, the United States gave just 0.18%. That's far below the United Nations target of 0.7%. Only 4 countries, Sweden, Luxembourg, Norway, and Denmark, exceeded that target. Britain was right on target, and Germany at 0.66% was close. Okay, so that was actually claim 14. Sorry, I lost the count.